Hey everyone, this video is going to walk you through making that tree map that I talked about in the last video that went over different types of charts and why you might use them. So if you scroll down and look at the description for this video, you'll see a link to a data file. You're going to open that data file and save it as a CSV somewhere on your computer. Once you've done that, you're ready to go. I'm going to upload it in Tableau. You can see that I'm ready. So it's a CSV, so it's going to come in as a text file. And I save all of my files in a file called Tableau Dataset on my desktop, and I'm going to grab this one, annual CO2 emissions per country.csv. Cool. Here we are. The first thing I want to do is look and see that Tableau has put the table that I want up here in the workspace. And then below, I'm going to look and see that I've got 4 variables. I've got entity, which is the name of the country, code, which is a 3-letter code given to each country, the year dating back to 1750. There's no CO2 emission recorded in 1750. That's not a surprise. But if I scroll down, I can see that, beginning in the 20th century, quite early in the 20th century, data becomes recorded with some regularity. Annual CO2 emissions in tons or thousands of tons. All right, so let's get started and work on that tree map. I'm going to go to my worksheet 1, and like I talked about in the video, the tree map is a great place to start when you don't really know what's going on. So I'm just going to take all of my variables and throw them in. So I don't need both code and entity because they're basically the same thing. So I'm going to take entity so that I know what it's talking about. I'm going to hold down command, I'm going to take year, and I'm going to take annual CO2 emissions, and I'm just going to bring them onto the table. It puts year and entity in our rows and columns, and then I'm going to ask for a tree map. So if you click show me, then go to tree map, then click show me again to make that go away, you have the beginning of a tree map. And so let's see what's going on. So I see a couple of things right away. You'll notice that nothing is labeled, and you've got to hover over each square to get a sense for how things are organized. So I can see right away that each large block pertains to an entity, and this first block is the whole world. Down here I've got Europe, then the EU, the US, North America, Asia. So I want to choose basically kind of a common theme here. Do I want an aggregation like continent or the world, or do I want countries? And the answer to that is that I want countries. So I'm going to need to filter. There's another thing I can see too, which is that we have CO2 emissions going down to -1. And we can't really have negative CO2 emissions, and there's 8 negative values, but I am going to filter it so that I show only positive values. So let's do those 2 filtering. Let's take entity first and place it in filters. Here, what I'm going for is to remove anything that's a collection of entities. For instance, the whole world. If I enter world in the search function, I can uncheck world. And then let's go through some of the other ones I saw. I saw Asia. Let's remove Asia and the subsection of Asia that excludes China and India. Let's remove Europe. I saw a few different Europes. So I'm going to enter EU, and I'm going to remove the EU, Europe, and Europe excluding the EU. I need to remove North America. So we're going to remove both North Americas. South America, there's only one. Let's remove it. What else did I see? Did I see Africa? Let's remove it. And I'm going to say okay, and then let's just see how we look. So United States here, when we date back to 1834, it produces the most emissions, followed by this next largest block, which is China, then Russia. So that's fine. One thing that I I'm thinking is inconsistent is that not all countries are going to have data dating back to the 1800s. So I also want to filter year. I'm going to take just the last 100 years. So I'm going to go 1919 to 2019, and I'll click OK. Great. Then the last thing I want to do is remove negative values. I want to filter out negative values. So I'm going to drag CO2 emissions into filters, and then I'm going to click that I want to filter on all values, and I'm just going to start us at 0. And I'm going to say OK. It changes the color, but that's fine. So now we're good. The last thing I want to do is a little bit nitpicky before we start talking about what we've got going on here is China is the only block in which there are labels, and I would like to remove those. It's sort of an all or nothing thing, these labels. Under Mark Label, we'll go to Never Show. All right, so now let's talk about what we've got. We have a tree map that's been organized by country first, showing the large blocks, and then by year second, which are the small blocks within each year. When I look at this, I notice that there are patterns. Not only are there differences between countries in terms of how much carbon dioxide they've produced in the last 100 years, the larger blocks being the biggest producers, but also there's differences in rates of growth. So for a country in which the blocks are relatively the same size, we're seeing a slower increase in the production of greenhouse gases. In countries where the small blocks and the large blocks are dramatically different sizes, like down here for China, we're seeing a rapid increase in the production. So this tree map is telling me right away that there are important differences in countries and important differences in rates of growth. So I'm going to call this tab Treemap. I'm just going to call it Treemap. Let's just leave it there. Great. Treemap. No, that's not. I can't do it. I can't do it. CO2 emissions by country, 1919 to 2019. I feel much better with that title. Now at least I know what it's looking at. And that's how we make our tree map. In the next video, we'll talk about bar charts and line charts. Happy watching.